means that we really can only know what's happening now. And at the same time, through the power of your Holy Spirit and the grace you've given us, we can look to the future. We only hope that as we do, that you would guide us and that we would follow the paths that you have set out for us. That's why we're gathering today, so that we can begin to try to discern together where we are going, where you are calling us to go as a church. So thank you for each person here, and especially we thank you for our church that has blessed our lives in so many ways. We want it to continue to be strong and vital for many years to come, just as we know that you wish that for us as well. So we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, well, thanks again for coming. And this is my fifth time doing this, so hopefully I've got it right by now.
You did well the fourth time.
Pardon me?
You did well the fourth.
Well, good. Okay. This is the fourth, not only the fifth time total, but the fourth time this week. So I'm on the top of my game. Anyway, it really has been an honor and a privilege to be here as your pastor for these last 15, 16 months. And a privilege to get to know the church family, both collectively and individually. Those of you, if you were kind of paying attention to the way that I approached my coming in, I really, especially to begin with, wanted to just blend in a sense of how the church operates, what are the traditions, what are the ways that this church does things. Somewhere along the line, as a young pastor, I was made aware by kind church members that when I arrived in church, that church had been around a long time before I got there, and it will be around a long time after I'm gone. And I've always tried to keep that in mind. And so I mainly just tried to kind of just get situated and hear your stories and get to know you. Over time, though, that strategy begins to change for a pastor, and we begin to try to analyze and explore, learn, and discern a future direction for the church. The pastor has the ultimate responsibility to set that direction. A wise pastor does that in conjunction with other people, and hopefully with prayer and study and all of that sort of thing. But the buck does finally stop with the pastor. And so as I've been gradually shifting from observing to learning to discerning, I've been thinking about that. Discerning a vision for the future of the church involves paying close attention to the current state of the church and its past and history and all of that, but also to the context, the surrounding community that the church was placed. It involves learning to know both the church, what it's serving, but also the context in which that church is serving. It requires, as I said, prayer and study and imagination, and of course input from people from the church and the community. And these meetings that we've been conducting are, I think, an important step along the way. And I hope you'll take what I'm sharing with you seriously enough to pray about it, to think about it, to ask tough we want to put our own challenges into the context of the challenges that mainline churches and churches in general are facing. We're certainly not alone in the challenges that we face. In fact, we're in a much better shape than many other churches. I just heard yesterday that a Methodist church from Byfield, Massachusetts, right near where I used to serve a number of years ago, has decided to close its doors after 187 years in ministry. When I was in that area, the church was actually in pretty decent shape. That was 20 some odd years ago, 25 years ago. So we're not alone in this challenge. And these are difficult times for most mainline churches, and unlike, for example, the 1950s, when we couldn't even imagine the church not being an important part of the culture and our communities, the future is full of uncertainty. And as we all know, we're not immune from that uncertainty. But one thing that it seems to me to be very clear is that some things need to happen in our church, some different directions, some new ways of doing things, if our future is to be a bright one, and if we're going to be able to continue and expand the vitality that this church is able to share with our community. Our congregation, quite simply, is not growing at a fast enough rate to guarantee a future beyond 15 or 20 years from now, especially given the average age of our active members. That is a reality. So again, the big question is, where do we go from here? Where is God calling us? And today I want to offer a response, a partial response to that question. Now, this response is in the form of a vision for our church that has come about, as I said, from observation, conversation, prayer, sermon. For me, a vision is visual. It involves what we can imagine in our mind's eye. And so for me, when I think about a vision, I think of a picture of a preferred future. I always try to also think in terms of metaphors. What are some ways that we can think about and symbolize where God might be calling us? So as I have thought and talked and prayed, the picture, the vision, the metaphor for what I sense God calling us to do and be is this. I keep thinking of this image of an evergreen tree. And not only are evergreen trees beautiful, but what is really remarkable about them is the fact that they are green throughout all the seasons of their lives. And for me, what that means, as I relate to our church, is that I believe that God is calling our church to be an evergreen faith community that helps people experience spiritual, emotional, and physical vitality through all the seasons of their lives. Now, this here is a little bit of a draft mission statement. I've already gotten some feedback on the way that we put it together a little bit, and I say it's a draft because it is a work in progress. And also, I don't believe that the pastor should be the one solely writing mission statements. It doesn't work very well if that's the only input. So this is a work in progress, and the wording exactly might change. Particularly, we got a little bit of pushback on the last little section there where we added, particularly in the senior years. And that may change, and that may Seniors provide a large proportion of our church's leadership and energy. With the addition of Wesley Woods in our backyard and the fact that Wesley Woods is still only half built out, but even so, that is another unique circumstance, especially because of the fact that Wesley Woods also means that we have a regular influx of retired clergy and their spouses, and they bring wonderful gifts into the life of our church, and that will continue to be the case for as long as we can imagine. The commitment and involvement of retirees and seniors in our church is a critical factor in many of the areas of our church that are vibrant and healthy. And this in turn makes our church an attractive community for other seniors. Ministry with and among older adults is something that is already happening in significant ways in the life of our church. And so focusing on these ministries enables us to build on our strengths. So that's one of the rationales. But the second rationale for focusing on ministry with seniors in particular has to do with anticipating the future. So, and if we want to look at the future, I want to take us through a few demographic statistics. And the first thing that I want to mention to you, and this may be very common knowledge to all of you, but maybe not. The first thing that needs to be said is that our region's population is aging. And by region, I don't mean just simply the Lakes region or even New Hampshire. The Northeast as a whole is aging. If you were to look at a map that maps out the median age of folks in the United States, this map, for example, shows all the different states. The darker blue states are the states with the highest median age. The lightest non-blue are the states with the lowest median age. And if you will look, you will see that most of the blue, the dark blue, and even the medium blue is clustered in the eastern part of the state, but especially and specifically the northeastern part of the state. Florida is the only exception. Florida, of course, is no big surprise that we would imagine that that's been the way that it's been in Florida for years, that they've had a high median age, and for the reason that people come to Florida when they are retiring and such. In the Northeast, it's a fairly different reason for why the median age is dropping, or is increasing rather, and that's because unlike Florida, where folks are coming in the Northeast, young people are leaving, and that drives up the median age. That's somewhat less true of us here in the Lakes region, which is a magnet for retired folks. And you can see that by the simple fact that if you look at the new construction that has been happening in our region, it's virtually all been for over 55 communities. Westwood, of course, is one example of that, but one of many. Now, so really what you find is that, generally speaking, our region, the Northeast, is aging. The reality is that New Hampshire is one of the states that is at the forefront of that aging population. You can see here, in terms of the 5 states with the highest median age, the first 3 are in the absolute northeast part of our nation, and within the last probably 10 or 15 years, our median age in this region has actually gone higher than Florida. That wasn't the case not that long ago, and it continues to rise. So that you'll see, for example, that in 2010, New Hampshire was the 4th highest median age, 41.1, and in just 3 years, it went from the 4th to the 3rd highest median age, to 42.3. That's an increase of 1.2 years in 3 years' time. Put that in a bigger context. In the last 15 years, the median age in New Hampshire has increased 5 years. Now, statistically speaking, that's significant. Imagine that if you just suddenly woke up tomorrow and you were 5 years older than you are now. I know it's a scary thought, but oh yeah, I'm so I'm retired. Hallelujah. But for most of us, it's only our children that our young children that would like to put on 5 years overnight. I almost think there might be a movie for this. You know, wake up and be 75 years old overnight. Anyway, but you know, the aging that's happening within our area, within New Hampshire, within the Northeastern General, is rapid. And again, some of that had to do with a decrease in young people in the area. All of this, of course, as we've already seen, is reflected in New Hampshire. What we need to understand is that those rates of aging are not evenly reflected throughout the state. And again, this is probably nothing new to us. If you know anything about the southern parts of our state, they are much younger than the northern. And just as the further north you go in our nation, the further north, the higher the median age. So it's true that the further north you go in New Hampshire, the higher the median age. So you can see here that each town in the state of New Hampshire is outlined. The darkest brown are the towns with the highest median age, and obviously the lighter, the lower the median age. The red ones are towns that, in typical New Hampshire fashion, refuse to give information to the folks who are putting this. Live free or die. Or live free and die, as the case may be. But anyway, but again, you look at the central area where we live, and right around where we are is kind of a little brown belt, you might call it. And again, that's because of the fact that this is an area that attracts folks who want to retire. And I'm sure some of you here are folks who are in that situation. Maybe you spent summers here when you were growing up, or when you were raising your family, and then decided to retire here. I'm looking specifically, for example, at Myrna. So in other words, in an aging state, we live in a part of, in an aging state, in an aging region, we live in a part of that aging region, and it's aging state that is aging even faster than other parts of that. Now, that's our reality now. But as they say, we ain't seen nothing yet. The nation, and in particular the state of New Hampshire, and even more in particular the Lakes region, is facing what some demographers are calling a silver tsunami. That is to say that easily observable statistics, these are not predictions, in other words. These are not trying to figure things out for speculation. These are saying, there are folks who are alive who are probably going to continue to live. And according to those easily observable statistics, the over 65 population of the United States as a whole is expected to nearly double by the year 2030. But remembering that our region and our state are aging faster, figures indicate that by 2030, nearly 500,000 New Hampshire residents will be over the age of 65, representing somewhere in the neighborhood of 1/3 of the state's population. This represents a doubling of the current over 65 population over the next 15 years or so. And remember that some areas will feel that more than others. And we are in one of those areas. Okay? Now, as you can well imagine, if you haven't thought about this before, this silver tsunami will have all sorts of impact upon our nation, our state, our region, and we can perhaps talk about some of those a basic health services that relate to our human dignity. Pardon me?
Robots.
Yeah. Well, maybe, But we can talk some of that perhaps later. But the primary reality that I'd like to encourage us to think about is that for the foreseeable future, there will be lots and lots and lots of seniors living in our midst, even more than we currently experience. Now, I believe that there's lots of blessings that come with that, as well as some challenges. And that these are blessings particularly for our church, because we already know a lot about ministry with seniors, don't we? My vision, what I see as I think about the evergreen concept, is for our church to continue to build on these strengths of ministering to and with seniors so that we can ride this silver tsunami for all it's worth. Because here's the reality. Even though there are lots of churches who face similar issues to what we face here at the First United Methodist Church, there don't seem to be many who are intentionally embracing ministry to seniors in the way that I would say the evergreen concept that we're talking about is envisioned. In other words, there would seem to be a vacuum in terms of ministry with older adults. And there's an opportunity for us as a church to fill that vacuum and become one of the primary options for older adults looking for spiritual community. Now, for me, it's helpful to think about what maybe some of the needs and wants of this age group are, because if we are indeed going to be embracing this silver tsunami, we need to get to know what the needs and values and things that are that seniors think of as important in terms of what they're looking for in a church and in their lives in general. And it's not really hard necessarily for us as a church to find the answers to those questions, because we can, I don't want to be flip about it, but we can ask ourselves. Or we can certainly, in other words, ask the retired and aging folks in our community, what are they looking for? And so I just kind of began to compile, just based on things I've heard folks share, thinking about my own mother's experience. She's 85 years old, and I'm really the primary person who watches out for her because she lives on her own. And just other things that I've picked up. And so some of the needs and wants for retirees are things like community, especially when people move to new areas. Many of our seniors are doing. They want to find a way, a place to get connected. This next one is really important. Opportunities to use my skills and life experience to serve others in meaningful ways. Some folks, after they've kind of gotten through being able to do all the fun things that they anticipated doing in their retirement, realize they want to back off a little bit. They maybe don't want to go play golf 5 days a week, maybe 2 days a week, and maybe they want to do something a little different and maybe a little bit more spiritually fulfilling. Not that golf can't be spiritually fulfilling, but although not if you play it the way I do. Makes me swear sometimes. But anyway, but it's Methodist. So there's no. But anyway, this sort of spiritual quest of saying, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I've had all of these years of experience to learn and grow, and I can bring life skills and wisdom, and what am I going to do with that? And maybe I was able to do some of that in my vocation, but maybe my vocation took me far away from the things that I think I would really want to do. Now I've got an opportunity to do that. Related to that is opportunities to pursue interests or skills, develop new skills that I've always wanted to explore but never had the time to do. My mother, in her retirement, started taking painting lessons. She always wanted to do that, and she learned how to paint. We have several of her watercolors in our home. She was a wonderful, learned to paint very well. And that was something that she was able to do that she never had time to do when she was raising us and working and bringing money into the house. I've noticed that a lot of our senior members love to travel. But also that they love to travel with friends. And especially Recreation, especially folks who move to an area like this, they want to be able to take advantage of the opportunities for recreation that our area affords. Physical fitness related, of course, to recreation. Financial concerns, right? All of our life insurance salesmen want to tell us that none of us have enough money to live through our years of retirement, right? And probably true for an awful lot of us. Our money ends before our life does. End of life counsel and care. We just had the Aging Matters workshop, and a lot of the questions that people had related to just funeral services and a durable power of attorney and DNR, and there's a new form called the Holst form that is somewhat along the lines of a living will, but lots of issues around that. I think I've noticed that with a lot of our seniors, they like short-term rather than long-term commitments. It's hard to make a long-term commitment if you're spending 5 or 6 months of the year down somewhere else, right? I think actually short-term commitments work for a lot of people, not just seniors these days, but especially folks who want to be able to be free when their kids call and say, we really need you to come down for the weekend, to help to watch our kids or that sort of thing. They want to be able to be free to do that. Short-term, I'll skip one because this one is related. Short-term mission trips. I've seen a lot of our seniors really enjoy the opportunity to go on a travel with purpose on a short-term mission trip. Respite for those caring for spouses with major health issues. We see a lot of this where one person winds up caring for their spouse, even though they themselves may have some fairly significant health issues. They're just not as serious as their spouses, and then they eventually maybe become serious because they're so overextended caring for someone. So respite for those persons, just an opportunity for them to have a few hours without having to be concerned about caring for their loved one. Cultural events are big, and you can see that reflected in our area with so many musical offerings and great local theater and that sort of thing. Maintaining vital connections, and this is especially true once folks become a little less able to get out, and they still want to stay connected with their communities that they are part of. And then last but not least, transportation for many folks becomes eventually an issue. That was just sort of the list that I came up, but perhaps some of you have other needs that you can imagine that seniors might have, or that you yourself have as a senior. Anybody got any suggestions?
You could help nutrition.
Nutrition, yes. That would be certainly under health, but very specifically because some folks, especially if they're living alone, nutrition becomes an issue. They don't want to cook for themselves.
The other thing that I do address is that I heard something on PBS when they talked about what areas are coming from church
Mm-hmm.
and Vermont and
Yeah, yeah. We're in definitely mission territory. Peggy was saying, that we here in New Hampshire and Vermont are the least church populations in the United States, and so that's part of what we're
And
working
the
on.
thing that young people are getting diagnosis themselves, they're being attracted to are these big.
Well, for the time being, at least,
Music,
the
yeah.
mega churches are. I'm not sure that that's going to stay for sure either. That's it's so hard to get a beat on that. It's the old moving target. You think you got a beat on it, and it moves. But we'll address that a little bit. Someone in one of the other sessions mentioned part-time employment, that a lot of folks, once they're retired, want to be involved in something, either just to bring money in or just to have something to do, or both. You had
One of the things I've learned as a result of living in Western Europe, they think that that's all clergy up there, but it's
no.
not. It's know, it's,
Right.
and I think it was an eye-opener to me, and I'm glad
Yeah.
to see that. But I think we need to find a way for the rest of us.
Right,
To get
and-
better feel for everything.
Yes. Well, just for those who will be watching this, and also anybody who didn't hear what we were going to say, that when you think about a lot of times younger folks we talk about them as increasingly unaffiliated with any sort of major religious organization, but they would certainly describe themselves as spiritually oriented. And just because they're not going to church doesn't mean that they don't have spiritual feelings and needs. And I believe, in fact, that they strongly do. And that what Myrna said that is that just with the experience of living in Wesley Woods, we found that even within that population, there's quite a few who would describe themselves as spiritual, but not connected to a church. I think that may have something to do with our area, perhaps for a long time, moving towards less automatic church involvement, right? I mean, many of us grew up in a time when, of course, you went to church. This is what you did. Good people go to church, and if you don't go to church, there's something wrong with you. I think right now it might even be that things are completely reversed. If you do go to church, there's something wrong with you. But certainly, we may have been heading that way for a longer period of time, and that may well be reflected within the senior population. Yeah, right,
My other suggestion
sure.
was on that note, I just wonder if the church could, because we have an older population of grandparents and even some adopted grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why couldn't we attempt to do things where we would be involving our grandchildren?
Well, now you're anticipating some of where we're going. No, I appreciate that, and all of these questions really anticipate my final piece, okay? And then we can talk, or if you need to leave, you can leave. But you know, I guess what I want to say is that we are going to be faced with a really severe and big challenge if we are going to define our success as a church in how many young families we're able to attract. I see us a lot of times kind of beating ourselves up over this fact and feeling like we're less than the church. And let me tell you that as a pastor who's been serving churches for 27 years, this is a great church. There's so many wonderful things about this church, and we ought to feel good about that. And that's kind of what I'm saying. Let's build on our strengths. Now, that doesn't mean we abandon our folks, and that actually leads us to the big question that probably people are thinking about when we talk about this, being a little bit more focused on, or maybe even significantly more focused on our ministry with seniors. What about youth and children? Does this mean we're just going to say, forget it, we don't need them, we're just going to go and focus on older folks? No, not at all. There's a two-part answer to this question. First of all, is that I personally would never I could never countenance anything that would exclude anyone. However, I do believe that you can focus your energies, just as many organizations and businesses do, the area of the folks that you're most able to reach. I'll use an example from the fast food industry. Okay? Not that I recommend anybody go to the fast food restaurants, but in my former life, when I wasn't paying close attention to what I ate, I would go to fast food restaurants, and perhaps some of you have in the past as well. When you go to McDonald's, who do you see McDonald's primarily focusing their energies on? Kids, right? They've got Ronald McDonald as their spokesperson. They've got bright colors in there. They've got Happy Meals with the toys from the latest Disney. They're very clear about getting connected with the most recent stuff, so that your kids will want to go and get a Happy Meal, not just because they like Happy Meals, because they want the little toy that comes along with that, right? They used to have, you don't see this very often, but they used to have the play areas with those really horrible ball pits and the filthy germ. I don't know if they do this quite as much now, but they used to build their restaurants. I mean, this is how far the marketing goes. Build their restaurants in such a way that, and the seating in such a way that you wouldn't want to sit in there for more than 20 minutes. Then you'd start getting uncomfortable, right? They wanted people in and out because they want kids. Now, so that's reality. Although it's changing a little bit, because if you go to most McDonald's now at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday or whatever, who do you see there? Drinking their senior coffee, right? They're seeing the silver tsunami and saying, well, we maybe need to get in on that too. But traditionally, they have been very much oriented towards children. Now, suppose somebody our age goes into a McDonald's. What happens? They serve you. Right? They don't say, well, you're not in our target demographic. They might even have a few things on the menu kind of geared towards adults. But the primary thing still is the children. Go to Wendy's. Who do they go after? Who's their target? Everybody. Adults. Not even really everybody. Not kids. It's not that they don't want kids, but they're the adult alternative. For what kid wants to eat a baked potato? Or a salad, right? So, McDonald's, burger that's kind of the way that I would understand where we would be going. That it isn't that we're saying, well, we're going to abandon those folks. We're just going to put our primary energies and resources where we seem to have our most success already anyway. And at the same time, we want to do everything that we can to support, at least current levels, the folks who are doing wonderful work with our children. That's one piece. The other piece of that is we need to get more creative in how we make sure that our children have enriching experiences like what we've had when we were growing up. And one of the ways that will happen, I think, over and over again, and this is happening more and more anyway, is through collaboration with other churches. We are already doing this with our youth program. I saw last year that we were having a hard time having regularly planned events, and I also realized we didn't have quite enough kids to guarantee a critical mass that even if they did show up, there was going to be more than 2 or 3 kids. Teenagers do not want to just hang out with 2 or 3 kids and one adult. Just not probably what they're going to do. They're not going to make extra time to do that. So what we decided to do was to have our youth programming together with the Tilton Northland Church. Together we have a big enough critical mass that almost all of the events are pretty well attended. Never more than, certainly more than the 2 or 3 that we were getting at most last year. And we also have more people to be involved in the actual planning. So we actually have like a schedule of events for the end of the year. Amazing. And it's that sort of thing, because so many churches are dealing with this issue of small numbers of families and children. How do we do things that allow the critical mass that we talk about, for example, at the Gilford Community Church? How do we kind of do that for our kids when we don't have them right here and we can't suddenly just wave a wand and we find collaborative ways of doing that? Maybe not every day, maybe not on Sunday morning, maybe not on Sunday afternoon. Going back to, what's Sunday for a lot of people? It's the one time Sunday morning.
It's not like you have 15 services.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Saturday.
Well, we may get that. So that's one thing, that we want to support what we have and build on it mainly, and one of the best ways I think to do that would be through collaboration, being creative, and moving beyond what we've already had. But here's the other piece. And it goes back to, I can't remember exactly who said it. We're talking about a group of folks within our congregation and in our communities who have tremendous life skills, tremendous desire to be useful in the world now that they've got a little free time that they didn't have, or at least more discretion in how they use their free time. A lot of retirees I know are not they're very busy, but at least they're choosing more of how they're spending their time. What if we could somehow leverage all of that incredible gifts and talents and skills and compassion and life experience in ministry out in the community? So, for example, what would be some of the things that maybe some of our folks might be able tutors. Some of us maybe don't want to be foster grandparents, but we know something about biology or science or whatever. We could tutor some kids in our area who need free tutoring. Reading in public school classrooms. Free medical services. We've got lots of folks in our congregation who have backgrounds in health, the health industry. And there's lots of people in the community who aren't connected to our church but would love to volunteer to provide health services, free health services in our community. Free legal services. We don't have any lawyers in our church that I'm aware of, but there are people in the community, again, who would be willing to do that. Music lessons. Art lessons. Our schools have cut those areas to the bone. What if our church became a place that kids could come and get music lessons or art lessons for free? Because we've got retirees who are willing to do it, who would love to do so.
They do get to sing in chorus already.
Yeah, right.
It's free.
Yeah,
At least we can sing.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's an example of it already happening. Yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of these things we are doing some of these, right? And some of the needs that I mentioned before, we have ministries already working that work either formal or informal that meet some of those needs, right? We're talking just expanding and building upon that and opening up the opportunity for as many people out in the community, all the seniors. And if we could leverage that, we could make a huge impact in this community, a community that's hurting, as we all know, a community that just right across the border in Laconia, 75% of the kids are either have free or reduced lunches. And if you talk to Bonnie Weston, a member of our church who teaches second grade at the Pleasant Street School, well, she'll tell you that some of these kids are coming in, their lives are so already traumatized and so already messed up because of the chaos that they're living in. And education is the last thing that is happening for them. They need somebody who can say, hey, we care about you. I'll be here for you. Right? And then maybe it might be a little older. Who knows?
You might, there's a population too that we don't see much of, and that's like Tyler's age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Carols. And what I found with that age group is that we have a purpose or a
Absolutely.
reason.
Yeah.
And so if we were doing something like that, we might actually get a lot of
A lot of the unaffiliated, they will get involved in a project.
because it's short.
Yeah. So it's partly because it's short, but also because it's meaningful. They don't want to sit around and do religion.
That is being fostered in the school system.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Community, involvement at the high school.
And what I would say is that in an ironic sort of way, this effort that we're talking about here may actually result in more young families and more young adults coming into the church. Sometimes the best way to do something is to forget about doing it. And I'm using that, I'm not saying completely forget about it, but sometimes just you get much more things, you get your things really done by like lowering the intensity level. You know, I gotta tell you, in my time here, sometimes it's good to have another set of eyes coming in from the outside. God bless you all. But when a family comes in here, they get bombarded. We want them so much. We need them so much. And we're like, oh, won't you come? And they never come back because they're scared. I'm telling you, it's true. We love bomb, but it's kind of our need rather than their need. Do you understand what I'm saying? We do that because we want them, because we need somebody to help us feel like our church has a future. And nobody really wants to be our project, and you can't blame them for that, right? Would you want to be somebody else's project? I'm not trying to be critical. It's very understandable that we would behave that way, but it is a way that we do behave. At least I've seen it, and it's kind of cute in a way, except that it's terrifying for people who experience it. So what I'm suggesting is that maybe in an ironic way, the way for
it's all